What's happening? Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Dominance Academy, and I'm your host, Mr. Justin. And we got a good show for you planned up for today. It's about the gift and responsibility of dominance. And, so as I'm coaching, you learn as you coach, actually. There was this old line that says, if you if you're a teacher, you learn twice, and that often is the case because when you learn something, it could be years ago, and then it gets integrated into you, and then you just kind of take it for granted, and and then once you start teaching it again, like years down the line, then this becomes like reimagined and relearned, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that stuff. So a lot of times you'll take certain things for granted and realize that not everybody's on the level, So that's what's going on with that. Let's turn this down a little bit. All right. So yeah, and you'll be able to learn more in depth about these things, along with a whole host of other stuff at the Dominance Academy. So if you go to thedominanceacademy.com, you'll find a whole mess load of information about dating, relationships, sex, power dynamics, BDSM, and basically how to construct a relationship for someone who's got a more of a traditional mindset where you believe in very bifurcated roles. The man does this, the woman does this, and it's very clear cut. And I teach guys, how to basically set that up, how to manage it, and but truly not to my preferences. Really, it's about helping the guy figure out what his preferences are, what his standards are, what his guiding principles are, and using that to situate how he's going to operate things. And everybody's different. So let's jump into the topic here. And I wanted to talk about the gift and responsibility of dominance. And, I hear a lot of guys talk about wanting to be the leader, wanting to be in a position of leadership, wanting to be in a position of calling the shots. And yeah, to be frank, it feels good. Okay. It feels good to be in charge, where you say something and somebody else follows, because that is basically a symbol of power. Okay. And essentially power is someone having the ability to tell other people what to do, and they do it. All right. That's power. So if you look at someone who's, say, has a lot of resources, and they're very wealthy, they have people working for them. They don't have a business that they go to every single day and unlock the front door or whatever. We're talking very wealthy. They have people who cook for them, clean for them, drive them places, fly them places, manage their money. They have everybody doing everything for them because they have power. All right. So most guys aren't going to that level of extreme, but the point is that you can have power in your life and operate like a man, and you don't have to be a gazillionaire. It's not necessary. It has to do with an internal relationship. And in the academy, we can teach you how to foster that internal relationship, which then gets transmuted outwardly. And it's going to transmute outwardly whether you are a blue-collar worker, or you're middle class, or you're upper class, or you're fucking elite class. Because, I'll tell you, I've worked with guys who were government officials. I'm not obviously can't name any names, but this dude, it wasn't an official, but he worked for a particular department within the government, and he had a lot of power in his life, but he didn't know how to use it. He had it within him, but he didn't know actually how to express it within a relationship so that he could actually formulate what it is that he wants. And so within my training, I was able to cultivate the tools that he already had, and they just said, oh, look, this is how you can express it. This is how you can lay it out. This is how you can make things work for you. Okay. So that's basically what we do. What's going on, folks? 100% me. Thank you. Fat John 911, good to see you. Hello, Peach Rose. Thank you for stopping by. And anybody else here who's in the chat, if you guys got any questions about the topic or anything else that's related, no football shit. But yeah, keep it on topic, the gift and responsibility of dominance. So when it's very cliche, it's very cliche that when you are put in a position of power, you have a responsibility. Because like that guy that I mentioned who's got, what's up, King Solar Power? The guy I mentioned, the fantastical example, he has to watch out for these people, right? Like, so yes, he's got a personal chef, but he has to make sure his chef is taken care of, that his chef is seen and heard and tended to and has his needs met, within like a certain criteria. You know what I'm saying? Like, same with his personal driver. If he treats his personal driver like a piece of shit, his personal driver is going to want to quit. And if he doesn't quit, he's going to develop some kind of resentment because it's like, well, fuck, he's paying me a shit ton of money, so I'll just stick around. But inside, he's like, fuck this asshole. I can't wait until I retire, And the same thing can happen with a personal chef, with his pilot, with the guys who manage his money. So, when you're in a position of leadership, you absolutely must be mindful of those that are underneath you. Okay, so now, granted, the majority of us are not going to be living like the guy that I made an example of, but we are going to be in a position of having a woman underneath us. And so this requires a lot of perception, a lot of mindfulness, and watching for a bunch of stuff. Like, this is why I preach so much about not allowing yourself to be guided by pleasure. Because when you're in a state of pleasure or seeking pleasure, which is even worse, because it's one thing to have it offered to you and you become immersed versus seeking it out to then be immersed, because now that's a dual layer, okay? When you're in this mindset of seeking out pleasure, then it dissuades you from being able to see everything else, because you're like a racehorse. They have those blinders on and they only see what's in front of them and what they want and how to achieve it, okay? We're not racehorses, all right? We have to be leaders. Leaders need to be back. They need to be able to see the landscape. They need to see what's going on and manage it properly, okay? Now that's a whole other skill set, but the first level is learning how to see. And you can't see if you've got your own shit in the way. And by your own shit, that's your own issues, your own beliefs, your own hangups, plus your attachment to desire, your attachment to sense pleasure. I gotta get a nut. Okay, relax. When you're that guy, it just comes to you. It's part and parcel of the whole thing. Like, it doesn't. I never had to say, God forbid, if I say, can I have a blowjob? Like, it's going to happen, right? Or I hear the question, Daddy, can I suck your dick? Let me see if I've got time. So you can't, when you're that guy and you're living in this life, and I'm not saying like specific to DS Dynamics, but it's, because it's deeper than that. DS Dynamics is a layer on top of the foundational aspects of manhood. It's just something that some people choose to do and some not do. But when you're foundationally there, you're not seeking out this pleasure, because that in turn controls you, and then she has control of you. Oh, she's in a bad mood. Damn it, I'm not going to get laid, right? Or I did a good thing and she's excited, and now you're like, ooh, I'm going to get laid. In either case, whether it's positive or negative, you're still being guided. You're still getting excited. I'm going to get some, or I'm going to get lucky, right? And no, like, she's getting lucky. That's my mindset. She's getting lucky. Actually, luck has nothing to do with it. It's, I've laid out the parameters such that she can promote herself to being able to get these sort of things, right? It's setting up certain scenarios within a program so that she's put into a position to win and excel and thus earn the things that she desires. Mixed with positive reinforcement and continually monitoring, like sitting back and continually monitoring how you can allow things to keep moving in that positive direction. Now you can't do that if you, again, you're fucked by your desire for sensual pleasure and desire for control, because even your desire for control can pull you off the path. Because if you're so hard up on being in control, when what you're trying to control goes like this, then you're just going to follow it. You see? So it's always coming from a state of invitation. Always. But with the understanding that, like, okay, I'm inviting you, you come over here, there's a certain amount of expectation. You follow it, you get good rewards. You don't want to follow it, there'll be some correction, possible punishment, and if that's not enough, then you will be dismissed. I got a question here from Blue Jay. How can dominance change a man's life if he lacks that? If he lacks dominance? Acquiring dominance isn't really, like, outwardly, it's really not necessary. It's not an absolute. Okay, this is just something that I enjoy. It's been something that I've incorporated over my life over a number of years, and I've noticed the positive benefits. Okay, but it's not exactly necessary if you're dealing with yourself on a foundational level. It's just something that comes about, right? It comes about as a natural growth from setting your foundation. Okay, if we can stay on the growth metaphor, seeds. So you're planting those sort of seeds within yourself, and dominance is often something that comes out as a result instead of seeking it, right? Again, what you're seeking now, that's controlling you. All right. So now, if you want to take it to a step further and have like a lot of organization and have it within the power dynamic structure, and you're looking for even more granular ways in which to express that dominance, then that's entirely up to you. You know, I know guys who are really, really detail oriented, and so they want to know what their woman's wearing every single day. They're given the power of choice. So it's like from socks to underwear to her pants, her dress, skirt, top, outerwear, everything is chosen by him. What she eats, when she eats, that's chosen by him. When she's having an orgasm, whether it's with him at that point or on her own, it's like she's not allowed to have an orgasm. All right? Even at the midst of like peaking, teetering on the edge of that cliff, and she really, really wants to come, she needs to ask. Right? I know guys who are like this. Finances, where he has full control of her finances, or she needs to ask permission to do any sort of extraneous shopping, like anything beyond the necessary things like paying for, your utilities and your rent or your mortgage or whatever. Anything outside of the necessary items has to be given permission, right? So if you want to take it that level, you absolutely can. It requires, so the more responsibility, the more detail you put into your situation, the more you're going to have to manage, which requires a certain kind of mind. Like, you can't be lazy, because it's not exactly, like, if you don't find that sort of thing enjoyable, so you just basically have to look at the rest of your life. Like, do you regularly keep Excel spreadsheets? Do you keep track of your finances? Do you collect your receipts? Do you track your macros and micros when it comes to nutrition? Are you on a strict exercise program where you track all of your the weights that you're using, how your cardio is doing, your BMI, and your body weight? So it's like, if you have like a tracker's type of mind, then yes, it would make a lot of sense for you to go further off into a more detailed DS situation. I'm kind of in between. Like, I'm not super, super detailed, but I'm not very lax either. So while I do have these general rules, it gets a little bit more specific, but I've realized for myself that with all that I have to do, if I take on too much detail of her life, then that's going to use up a lot of my brain power and my mental space and time to manage that, and that's going to take away from other things that I need to do. And that's fine, because it's a lot of it's about compatibility. She too doesn't require or desire that full-on level of discrimination of what she's going to be doing every minute of the day. All right, so it requires like certain people getting together that makes sense. Pete's got a question here. Can a dominant man's energy automatically make a woman's feminine when they are around? It can. So, but I wanted to jump back to Blue Jay's question here about changing a man's life if he lacks it. It depends on, like, you know, if it's something you want. And if you can tell, like, if you've ever been put in a position of leadership, like even young, like were you a camp counselor, were you ever a manager, were you ever given a major responsibility at some point in life, and did you feel uncomfortable, or did it feel like it just fit in? All right, that lets you know that there's something in you that can thrive in that sort of mentality of being a leader, of being dominant. And being dominant doesn't necessarily mean like you desire power over others. It's until you go past a certain threshold and it gets into kink. But before that, it's just something that's like naturally within you. And if it's there, then if you're comfortable in these situations, then that's something you can cultivate. You know, we can talk about that if you want. Just one-on-one. But a dominant man's energy sometimes can bring out like the woman's femininity, but not all the time, because there's not like a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. Okay, I've been with subs who just didn't like the way I did stuff. They didn't vibe with me. So there's a lot of things that are not just in the organizational aspects, but of the foundational who that is doing it. And if there's not that general sense of I'm comfortable around this man, I think I could respect this man, I have a certain element of trust for this man, I'm attracted to this man, both his intellects, the way he looks, the way he sounds, the way he smells, all of that's generally on point, then the dominance can take place. Okay, so it goes kind of hand in hand, where you can have a very well-functioning, very solid dom. Like, he really, really knows what he's doing. He knows how to lead. He's very structured. He has vision and wisdom and knows how to do it good. But perhaps she's just not attracted to him at all. Like, she just doesn't get a base feeling from him. Maybe his smell is off. He gives him a hug and she's just like, oh, I don't like the way he smells, right? Or kisses him and it just doesn't. There's no energy there. There's no spark or whatever, So there isn't like this foolproof thing. And the foolproofness isn't about them. It's not about women, right? I know, Pete, you were asking about women, but just to the guys, it's not about the women, right? It's just about situating your own shit so that it's effective and you can see what you're doing and how you're doing it, and you can plot things out and track things and understand yourself better. Okay. And once that feels much more calm, okay, like you're not fighting with yourself to be a certain something, right? Just you are. That's when things kind of fall into place, right? And so, or when things don't fall into place, okay, but easily. It's like you don't fight with the non-compatibilities. They come in, it's like oil and water. You're like, you know what? I'm sorry, this isn't gonna go much further, and you just kind of dismiss things, and you can keep things cool. But the thing is, though, is that if you know yourself very well as a man, things don't get along very far. Like, you can tell immediately. Right? So one of my early vetting things is just to see if she can take instruction. And she's going to take instruction if she has a certain level of trust, a certain level of curiosity, a certain level of attraction, and a certain ability and willingness to follow what I'm saying. And so I test this with small instructions, very easy, low cost, right? In terms of her time and energy, stress, or whatever. And if she's able to do these easy tasks, then I keep testing and just seeing how far she can take it, which then gives me an indication of how willing she is, how attracted is she, how interested is she, how curious is she, okay? And these can keep going and going and going. Actually, they can keep going forever. You start dating, it keeps going. You get into a relationship, it keeps going. You're into a committed relationship, it keeps going. You get married, it keeps going. And you can keep developing, because as you're setting a different bar, and then they're working to achieve this through your leadership, your guidance, your positive reinforcement, and all this good stuff, then it just can keep going forever. All right. But people stop. They're like, oh, I got the girl, I'm going to stop vetting. It's like, no, you have to continue vetting. You don't get to kick your feet up. And this is the plight of so many guys. They get the girl and they're like, okay, I can relax now. That's not how it works, man. You got to stay the same dude, right? And you're like on point, watching what she's doing, watching what she's saying, how she's behaving, how she's reacting. And then you just stop doing that once you get together. Yeah, things are going to fall apart, because that was the beginnings of your structure. And then you're just like, okay, we don't need that structure anymore. I'm getting the sex I want, the sharing experiences that I want. She's cute, I'm cool, whatever. And now I'm just going to relax. And, this is what leads to, the driving down of respect, driving down of attraction, boredom, stepping out on relationships, dead bedrooms, all that shit. Hey, what's up, Dickalux? Good to see you, man. He's got a question. Is there dominant guys who might struggle a bit after a while come into themselves? Are there dominant guys who might struggle a bit after a while coming into themselves? I think that's what you're trying to say. So, no, because all the while the struggle comes from often discomfort and fear. Okay, so I've worked with guys who had already previously, they've been dominants, like straight up, like in the BDSM scene, like they're very active. Okay, but then they will they'll feel bad, or they'll feel weird, and they'll no worries, buddy. I was just trying to understand what you're saying, Duckalux. So they've been in the scene, they have a lot of experience, but then they'll feel guilty afterwards, right? They'll have a scene or something like that, or they'll instruct strict rules on their sub or whatever, and they'll start to feel bad. Okay, and they struggle with this. Like, I want to be like this. I want to be forthright and grounded and, assertive and guided by my principles and the rules that we created and all this stuff. While at the same time, I want to care for this woman. I don't want her to feel bad. I don't want to stress her. I don't want to impose my will on her. I just want to take care of her. All right. And this is a common struggle. Okay, this is a real common struggle amongst guys. I've come across this a number of times, and but I have the ability to just like see it as its head is like popping right up, and then I can just dismiss it immediately, right? I've mentioned before, you can use the hatchet on your own mind all the time. It's not just for behaviors of other people; it's for your own thoughts and behaviors. Okay, so remember that. But yeah, there's some guys who kind of come into this, and there is like a little bit of growing pains, because you're dealing with old habits and then coming into new habits, and it's difficult to sometimes make that transition, because if they haven't done the work. Now, when you're working with me, there's a lot of processes involved to help dismantle the previous behaviors, so that there's not so much friction when it comes to bringing in the new. All right. But if you're bringing the new on top of olds that hasn't been taken apart, then you're going to have a lot of struggle. Okay. So in either case, there's going to be some growing pains, but there's far less if you go through a certain type of training to help dismantle old beliefs, old behavior patterns, and so on. Right. And that becomes a lot easier. But there is, like, what happens is you notice the difference, and you can, if you're used to, say like a guy's like real nice guy, and he's used to treating women in a certain way. He's used to making sure that they're always okay emotionally and stuff like that. And then through training, learning that can't be your guide when it comes to dealing with women. Right? The structure comes first. Then within that, if there's any sort of mistakes or whatever, or she's having a bad day that has nothing to do with you, it can be tended to, but within that structure. And the structure is your own mind, how you deal with yourself, what keeps you aligned. And that prevents you from falling at her feet. That prevents you from being the shoulder to cry on in that simpy kind of way, because you're like trying to get some shit out of her or whatever. So it's like, the funny thing is though, is that when you have the structure, it feels like you're being too firm. Okay. But that's what creates the vessel. Okay. So when you have a container, a vessel, when you have a container, it's firm. Like you can't put water in a, like it's, you ever put water in like a big Ziploc bag? Like it sucks carrying that around. It can pop, it gets sloshy, it's just terrible. But you put it in a firm container and it can be dealt with a lot easier. That's why if you look at products that are sold, milk, water, juice, soda, whatever, they're all in firm containers. They're not going to put them in bags because it's just inefficient. It doesn't manage the fluctuating amorphous nature of liquids, right? And women are very much liquid. They take forms. So it's like, you pour a woman into a teapot, she becomes a teapot. You pour into a flower pot, she becomes a flower pot. Okay? I'm paraphrasing an old Bruce Lee quote. But, so in order for that to happen more easily, it's being able to create that vessel, to create that container, that firmness. And if you're not used to being firm, that's when you can have a little bit of pushback with yourself. And, and guys will try this without the training prior. So, and that's where they feel that discomfort. And because they're so used to pandering, they're so used to making sure she's okay. But really it comes from a place of, if she gets upset, she might not like me anymore. And, when you have your own program developed, that's not part of it. Like your fear of being accepted by any woman is not part of the program. And so it relieves you of any of that stress. It relieves you of any of those constraints. And then being firm is not that big of a deal. And, I help guys understand that it's kind of like being that strict father, but who's also loving. It's like a strict, loving father, where it's like, no, you're not going to go fuck around outside the boundaries, but inside the boundaries, yes, there's going to be expectations, but you're going to be treated really well. All right. You're going to be treated with respect. You will be listened to a certain degree. Okay. I'm not going to make sure that you fall into pits of despair. I'm going to make sure that I'm monitoring what's going on with your mind. I'm going to monitor what's going on with your body, how you're living, what you're doing, how you're thinking, how you're feeling. That doesn't mean I'm controlling all of that. But when I see something that's kind of like veering out of course, that's my signal because I already know prior what her goals and aspirations are, what kind of person she wants to be. And this is through like frank discussion of getting to know the woman. Okay, now I'm talking about committed relationships. If you're just dating and fucking, you don't have to worry about all this shit. Okay, just get used to, giving instructions and not giving a shit if she follows them or not. Okay, like if she follows it, great. If she doesn't follow it, no big deal. Okay, but I'm talking about like in committed relationships where you actually want to see growth. You have these frank conversations where you can understand where she has her insecurities, where she has her doubts, because women bash the fuck out of themselves. And you might hear them out in the world like, oh, this super confident and all that stuff. Okay, super confidence doesn't say anything. Look at Yoda. Okay, like Yoda was, conceived like one of the greatest Jedis of all time. Was he boastful? No. He just was. You look at Anakin, he was full of just boastful arrogance. Okay, the most powerful thing is self-acceptance, and self-acceptance is quiet. Okay, so when you hear people say like, I'm a 10, I'm this, I'm that, I'm, like that's an expression. Like, who you trying to tell, me or you? Who you trying to convince? And so when I hear this, it just, I know that there's that baseline of insecurity. There's a number of self-hate. It goes in varying degrees. Someone are extremely destructive with it, and we see this with drug habits, drinking habits, and all sorts of destructive things in life. And then it could just be a little bit. Okay, it could just be a little bit, but it's there. It's like a common thread that I'd say most women share. It's just different types of threads. So knowing that, like learning what that is, learning what those insecurities are, those doubts, the degree of self-hate, and how to build that up, how to cultivate more growth and positivity within them, but then as the vehicle and anchor for those things, so that then you are like a channel for this stuff. All right, and that creates a very, very strong bond. And so I forgot what I was going with that, but the point is that this is the sort of stuff that you have to think about when you're in a committed relationship. You cannot just go by the seat of your pants and your instincts and sex. Like what comes from that? How do people get better? Okay, yeah, and it's true. Like a lot of people, they'll plan and grow things outside of themselves, right? They'll try to get properties, build savings for the future, stocks, IRAs, and try to grow some wealth, and maybe like get a couple of cars or whatever, and they try to like build this thing, maybe a summer home in Florida or whatever, But the people who are doing it, what are they doing inside the relationship? What are they doing inside them as individuals? And it all starts with the guy. It all starts with the man. And that requires having keen observation and a willingness to manage, because through management comes growth. Okay, as long as it's not coming from a place of a desire to control, because control doesn't grow very well. Okay, it has to have a genuine desire for growth. And the management is a certain type of control that isn't restrictive. So this is really the mindset. But when you have this, I'm telling you, it's just the relationship is totally fucking different. It's totally different, because when you see them lighting up from meeting certain goals, lighting up from achieving certain things like within themselves, lighting up because they feel great in their own skin, right? And then you can show them from like weeks before, or like months before, or years before, of the things and the attitude and the perspectives they had about the world around them, which is a reflection of how they see themselves, how they feel about themselves. And you can notice a shift along the way and go, baby, look where you were. Look where you are now, right? And giving that praise and being proud of them. Like, what can happen within that structure is massive. Okay, so it's really got to start with you though, and understand just the level of responsibility that comes through leading. Like, you don't get much day off, you don't get much time off. Okay, like you can sleep, but a lot of it is planning, a lot of it is observation, a lot of it is learning from what's happening. Okay, and tracking details. And how many details, like I mentioned before, how many details just depends on the type of guy. Okay, I've got some details. I don't have a ton, but I have some details. And then it's also subjective too, because someone might look at my program and go, dude, you are like super organized. Or another guy might look at my shit and go, not that we're like sharing notes or anything, but might look at my shit and go, you gotta tighten up, man. Like, look, you're missing a whole bunch of stuff that I would have in there. So it's subjective, but each of us would have a similar thread between us of the type of guy. Okay. And like I said, being organized, it's not absolutely necessary in order to be dominant. What really is the relationship you have with yourself, number one. And number two, severing the fantasy relationship that you have with the perceptions of other people. And that is really the beginning of your journey. Because if you're spending too much time thinking about how others perceive you and how they might receive you, that stops all growth, because it's like you'll step a little bit here, but you'll stop because you're afraid that person might get offended or question you or make fun of you or whatever. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to back up and I'm going to go this way. And then you fall into the same trap. You're like, I'm going to back up and go this way, fall into the same trap. So you get very limited by, by your own thoughts. It reminds me of that experiment done with fleas. I think they were doing with fleas. And so they put like fleas in a jar, and the first fleas, they were jumping and like smacking their head on the roof of the jar. And then they put other fleas in there and allowed them to mate. And the offspring, they learned that the ceiling was there without maybe like the genetic information passed through or something like that. I think that's what the experiment was about. But they limited their jumping ability. Like they didn't jump so high that it hit their heads on the jar. And I bet if they let them out of the jar, they would still only jump that high. So the same sort of shit happens, right? That's how having these perceptions, that's like the lid of the jar. When you've got a concern and an awareness of other people, right? And their thoughts and all that shit, okay? So just know that that's something to absolutely be aware of. And you can't really go any further until you get past that level. You'll be stuck where you are forever. If you're just thinking and considering, and be like when certain things come up, you have a certain thought, you have an idea, an impulse, and then you're like, nah, and you drop back. You're like, I don't want to do that. They'll make fun of me, right? I'll look like a fool, or that would be embarrassing, or like any kind of that shit. You know what I mean? Like you know when those certain things come up. So Dukaluk says, I consider myself a vanilla dominant, not in the BDSM scene, but I have sometimes problem with giving orders out of the bedroom, since I have this mentality about treating someone like you want. Yeah, so that's a really good point, and kind of what I'm talking about. So, one of the main things that guys are plagued with, a lot of people in general, is there's a lot of fear around acceptance and fear of acceptance and rejection. And a lot of times they don't even have evidence that there will be rejection. They just kind of presuppose that there's going to be rejection, and so they think it's likely to happen, or they don't know if it will or won't. So then they avoid expressing themselves, and and that's just like somebody who's playing an instrument or whatever, wants to give it a performance, and they have stage fright, and they're like, nah, I can't go out on stage. I'll be laughed off the stage, and it'll destroy my musical career. And you can't think like that. Like, if that's something that you truly want, now that raises another question. Is the desire for the things that you want to give instructions for something that you actually want, or is it something that's connected to an insecurity? Okay? So, like, I know guys who like to know where their woman is at all times. And so one guy can say, hey, I want to know where you are at all times. And it's more from a position of safety, basically. Because, like, let's say someone were to go wrong or whatever, and he needs to call the police, he can at least say, hey, at 12:52 p.m., she was at this location at this time. All right, that's the last I heard from her. So something like that, versus another guy who might actually say the same thing, but inside he's fueled by insecurity because he's afraid that she's gonna meet some other dude, or and then like someone else better than she likes him. And so when we're giving certain instructions, we need to understand what the impulse behind it is. Is it for control, or is it for guidance? And only the person who is giving the instructions can actually know that, if your ego allows for it. If your ego is very defensive, you're never going to learn. You're never going to figure out your own patterns, and thus you'll never gain a true relationship with yourself. You'll just be dealing with your patterns, thinking it's you, but it's not you. So there's that. My thoughts on that part. And yeah, it's like, it's totally fine to be, you don't have to be like dom, like, you know, just be yourself, right? Your true expression. But, you know, it doesn't have to be a certain way or not a certain way. Just understand that if you're being held back by a fear, okay, that's the important thing to examine of giving instructions. It also depends on what type of instructions. I mean, if it's something that goes against her morals, if it's something that goes against her safety, if it goes against her mental well-being, it goes against her hard limits, okay, then it's probably something you can't do with this person, okay? So it really just depends on the situation. There's a lot of details. Yep. So yeah, you said, Dukaluk, same with how they train elephants. They chain them first, and after a while they ease up on that and they will not move. Yeah, that's true. So they get conditioned to being in the same place, and they just think they're captive when really it's just their mind is captive, you know? So, but yeah, hey, Ray Blast, good to see you, man. I appreciate you stopping through. Salute to you. But yeah, so I hope that, you know, in this, you know, my meandering around the topic, because I do that sometimes, that you kind of get a sense of the responsibilities involved in leadership, involved in dominance. And the thing is, though, is that if there is that base level of attraction, that base level of intrigue in you, okay, and you take a step into unknown waters, all right, let's say you don't have training and you're just going to do it. You're just going to start giving instructions. You'd be surprised at how well they are met, how well they are received, because like I was explaining this to one of my guys, and he was actually struggling with the idea of giving instructions. He was a little scared because he was afraid his wife was going to push back and get upset. And I said, listen, do you know why women come together and commiserate with one another before going to a party? It's to give each other information so that they don't show up to the party or the event or the restaurant or the bar, whatever the venue is, and look out of place. That is one of women's biggest nightmares, is to do something in public and look out of place. Like, especially with dress. Like if she's like overdressed or underdressed or inappropriately dressed, she does not want to stand out like that. Okay, if she wants to stand out, it's just gonna be like a little bit, like where there's like an edge to it. Like maybe it's like a certain hairstyle or a coloring, an accessory, or an outfit that's like just a little bit outside of what's perhaps expected, but just a little bit. Okay, just enough to make people notice and go, "Oh, that's cool. Like, what's that? Like, wow, that's pretty," or whatever. Okay, just enough to stand out, but they don't want to stand way out. Okay. You don't want to make plans and it's going to a dive bar and no one instructs a woman on what's going on, or friends never share the information, and she shows up wearing a fucking $2,000 evening gown. She's going to feel really embarrassed. This is like a massive, massive thing with ladies. So, and this is why, and I gave him this example to illustrate how important instructions are. Because what that does is, just imagine now there is no sharing of information. And they just say, like, one girl, she's made all the plans. She's like, we're going to go to this place, just meet at this location. And they don't talk to anyone. In their heads, the women, like say it's like 5 women meeting up, they're all going to be going crazy. If only one of them knows all the details and is not sharing anything about it. They're going to be like, the chat is going to blow the fuck up of like, where are we going? What are we doing? What do we wear? Like, what kind of place is this? What's happening? Because that leads to anxiety. Lack of information with women leads to anxiety. Okay. They need to know the baselines. I'm not saying to overshare and give over too much detail, but you give enough in order to give her a prepared mind, which then settles her emotions, so that she can enter whatever that thing is with some bit of calm, all right? A certain base level of calm. By not giving her instructions in your relationship, you're introducing anxiety. By giving instructions, what you're doing is you're giving her the tools of how to show up, what is expected of you. And then if it's delivered in the right way and presented in the right way, then that gives her a bit of that anxiety release. She knows how to show up for you. Now, if she likes you, that's where it's met with positivity. If she's interested in you, she's attracted to you, she's got some curiosity, that's when you give the instructions, because then that gives you a temperature check on how willing she is, okay? Because it's not enough to just have attraction, all right? It's attraction plus willingness, okay? Because you could have two people attracted to each other that just stand there and look at one another, okay? You have to take that energy of attraction and do something with it, because attraction is just potential energy, all right? It's not kinetic at all. It's not moving. So in order to change it from potential energy to kinetic energy, you have to put it into a vehicle. That vehicle is through spoken word, a little bit of your body, when the situation calls for it. And that's what moves it through instruction from potential energy to kinetic energy. All right. That's when it moves and does something. If she's attracted, then things will move. Okay. But it requires giving instructions and not being afraid of like, oh, golly gosh, gee, I hope she doesn't, get upset by this instruction. I hope she likes what I have to say, because I'm so afraid that if she doesn't like me, that's going to mean, I'm rejectable, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, whatever. All the bullshit like a lot of guys have in their head about that sort of stuff. But it's like, if you believe in it, you stand on it, and you're very confident in why you're giving instructions in the first place, this changes a lot. This changes a lot of what's going on and how things move forward. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Exactly, Peach. Right. Sometimes when we ask you, how do we look in this outfit? That's part of it. Am I overdoing it? Am I underdoing it? Because she wants to fit in. And when she's with her man, she doesn't want to look like you're two separate entities. Okay. It's like, in some way, I mean, you don't need to have like his and her outfits, matching outfits. Like, that's a little bit overboard, but she wants to look like she's part of you. Okay. That's why like women are like really into like color coding and shit like that. All right. Whereas like, say she's got a dress, like my woman, she's bought me, what are those things called? Like ascots and like cufflinks and shit like that match things that she has, so that we can show up. And so my accessory, my little bit of color matches her majority color. So it's like we go together, but it's not like super duper matchy. Okay. That's what women want to do. That's why women are like very much into looking at how things visually fit in. Like, they're really good at that. Utilize that power. Okay. But she's also going to be second guessing these things if it's something going into that she's not familiar with. Like, you're bringing her somewhere or instructing her to do something. It requires more information, so she knows how to show up. But if you're afraid of how she's going to receive it, it's going to fuck up that whole equation. Right? Like, imagine having a job and your boss second guessed their instructions for you. Where they were just like, oh geez, yeah, I don't know, like, can you go like off to the bank, and the till is a little bit empty, so go to the bank and pull out, get $100 cash, right, to bring into the till. Oh wait, no, make it $175. No, 145. No, 200. Right? You wouldn't trust their judgment if they're like constantly second guessing their own decision making. Okay, you'd be like, damn, this dude doesn't know. And I remember like having jobs with bosses like that, and you're like, bro, just give me something to do. Give me the instructions. Tell me what the fuck you want done, because I'm sitting here picking my ass, wasting time. All right, and women don't like doing that. The fuck was that? I think that somebody just like threw a newspaper at the window, or a bird hit it. I don't know what the fuck that was. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get across to you guys. Like, it's they like the instruction. Like, you're taught otherwise. I get it. Guys in the West especially, they're instructed to to just see what she likes, see what she's into, see what she needs, see what she enjoys, and then just like do that. And things will be okay. But I think like since the whole, red pill movement and blue pill bullshit and all that crazy shit came out, it educated a lot of guys that like a lot of that was a big farce, right? That like women like the idea of Prince Charming, but like when they actually have him, it dries her up pretty good, right? That does not excite her to have Prince Charming. He's nice and all, and it's like cool to have somebody there who's like, man, I will do anything for you, woman. But it's hard to like maintain that respect. Like at first it's cool, it's like the shiny object, but then respecting someone like this becomes an effort. And when that respect starts becoming an effort for you, instead of just this natural inclination towards respect for this guy, when it's a struggle to keep that respect going, that you have to drop it, and it sucks. Like I know that it sucks for you, because I've like worked with married women and stuff like that, and they told me about these situations where they're with their guy, and then just how he's changed over the years or whatever, and just her respect has dropped down. And she's like, fuck, I'm in this relationship, I'm in this marriage, I don't believe in divorce, and I'm stuck with this dude who I don't want to like have to instruct him to be a different way, because then I'm like being his mom or his coach or whatever. Like I just want him to be that already, And this happens a lot with nice guy syndrome dudes, people who are raised up in like the blue pill society or whatever. They get stuck in this shit, okay? And it's a pain. It's a pain when they have to deal with the repercussions of that. But just know that oftentimes what the woman really likes, provided she's attracted to, of course, all right, is having that guidance, is having structure, is having someone telling them what the fuck to do. Because it allows them, it's counterintuitive. God, my mustache was like really itching my nose today. It's counterintuitive because of that initial nice guy sort of conditioning. It causes men to think, if I do this, it's going to cause her stress. And not only she's not going to like me anymore, but it's going to put her in an unpleasant mindset. She's not going to be happy, right? She's not going to be as approachable. This is going to stress her out. It's going to make her angry, whatever. Like it's going to have some sort of negative effect. That's the belief. All right. But know that if there's traction there, if that base level attraction is there, and there's an element of respect, you giving instructions is actually going to make things stronger. Okay. Why? Because that shows you're paying attention. Like I have concern for relationships where the guy isn't giving any kind of instructions, because it's like, bro, are you paying attention to anything? Are you looking at her behaviors? Are you monitoring anything? Do you have a sense of like where she needs to grow and where she is perfectly fine? Do you have any sort of like goals for the relationship internally? Okay, externally, fine. Yes, everybody has that shit. But like, where are you taking this internally? How do you want people to be? What are the pathways and the methods which you're going to get there? So it's like, I kind of feel like if he's not giving instructions, he's not paying attention enough. He's not paying attention with the right kind of lenses. Okay. And another thing with the the responsibility of dominance and the gift that it is, and it's a gift because it's just not very common, right? So, this goes in line with the whole, dick is a gift thing, but it's just like everything that I am is a gift, because I know how different it is. What sort of guys women mostly come across in their time. And they're not giving instructions. They're not leading. Some of them are like mimic that, but it actually comes off as very controlling. And, when you try to grasp at something, it really just runs away from you. That's just the way it works. Okay. But so I know that they have this experience. So I know that my effect, both in daily life, psychologically, emotionally, self-worth, self-perception, all that stuff comes through me leading them to a different view and perception and living through a different version of themselves. And I know how effective that is. I know what it does emotionally, what it does to their mind, and how that affects their daily living, how they see the world around them. Okay? Because people who are suffering, they have a very poor view of the world. They think it sucks. They think everyone's against them. They think they're surrounded by enemies and trying to get them, right? Someone who has a very positive outlook on themselves, or has a very balanced outlook on themselves, a healthy view and a healthy relationship, they have a completely different vision of what the reality is outside of them, right? So it's like, I know that I have that ability. So that's why it's a gift. I know it. So it's like, don't veer away from this, guys. Like, understand that women cherish this stuff. Okay, especially if you're giving, like, say, a brief explanation of why you're doing this, because knowing the why is really, really important. All right, you can't just say do this, right? Do this, and the reason why is because of this. And so they have an understanding of it's kind of like, say you're like you're going on a date. You're going on a date with your woman, okay? I'm not saying like just some random chick. Like, she's already a woman. You're going on a date and say, all right, baby, I want you to grab a backpack. I want you to put on a pair of light jeans, some sneakers with good tread, a tank top, t-shirt, bug spray, and, a hat. And pack your bag with these things, some water, and, throw in some snacks. Some healthy snacks that'll provide lengthy energy, and you just leave it at that. Versus you say all that and then you say, and the reason why is because we're gonna hop in the car and go on a little road trip. We're gonna spend the afternoon hiking amongst waterfalls, and I want us to be prepared. So there's a difference. You got to take things just a little step further, right? Now that's different than explaining yourself to her. All right, giving an explanation is different than explaining yourself. All right, explaining yourself is more you either you weren't clear, or you're having pushback and you're having to defend your position. All right, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about just giving further explanation of a certain instruction, and that further gives her a sense of calm. She's like, oh, okay, and now she has this anticipation, right? And you're like, oh, by the way, bring whatever, like, some sort of like sex toy or something like that. And now you've even added more to the anticipation, okay? Because think about it. You can't be feeling anticipation towards something that you don't know about, right? If I say to my kid, hey, we're going to go on a road trip, he's going to be like, okay, right? But if I say, hey, we're going to go to a road trip to your favorite amusement park, he's gonna be like, yeah, now he's got this thing to look forward to. And now his mind's like, right, racing with all the fun stuff that he's gonna do. It's the same sort of thing. All right. So when you give instruction, give a brief explanation of why you're giving the instruction. It's really, really helpful. So, Will W, what's up, man? Saying here, exactly. I ended a 5-year relationship. I felt she been checked out and had took a look in the mirror. I knew I had to get better. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's really all about. Like, the fellas, they always say that the game's not about women, and just this life is only about you. It's all about what you can learn and master of yourself. And the thing is, though, is that it's an endless onion. It's an endless process of just peeling away more and more and more layers. And it just keeps going forever and ever until your brain stops. All right. And then who knows? Because no one's ever been dead and come back and saying, hey, there's more to it, So it might even go on after that. Who knows? I'm very curious. But yeah, so the thing is with women is if you're perceptive, all right, if your ego allows for you to see, all right, and you don't protect it, women act as like this little microcosm for you to learn about yourself. All right, because the world will do that. Like if you have the same sort of mindset, this like your ego is open, you're willing to learn, you're willing to take certain difficult understandings about yourself, right? You're willing to take it on the chin. The world will do this to you, okay? But women are like this condensed version of the world, okay? When it comes to your behavior, because it will very quickly deal with your behavior, your habits, your beliefs, your perceptions. All of that stuff will quickly get challenged. You'll be put in certain situations where you will learn about yourself. And if your mindset is focused on learning of yourself versus how do I make this girl happy so she sticks around, then you'll learn quite a bit. If you're stuck with the idea of like, this is about her, this is about making me happy through sexual pleasure and, the intimacy of having a woman in my life, like that's all a distraction. I am not saying that you shouldn't like that. Like it's totally fine to enjoy sex. It's totally fine to enjoy intimacy and hugs and spending time with a woman you care about. Like that's fine. Okay. But if that's what you're there for, okay, and that's what you're distracted by, and that's where your attention is drawn to, you're never going to learn. And then when shit comes up, you're going to be very surprised. Okay. And then if you don't have the mindset of learning and being perceptive and having your ego just open to what happens, then you're never going to learn and grow, because those things will crop up, but you won't even be able to see it. You'll just react to it on the surface. You'll just react to things on a surface level and just deal with the symptoms. You'll be dealing with, say, like the argument or the fight at hand, and it's never going to really be anything significant. You'll never learn anything significant because you're just dealing with surface level arguments or disagreements or whatever, and then you're just going to be focused on keeping the girl around because you're so afraid of losing her. And it's like that's another aspect of the responsibility, is the responsibility to your own mental stability. As a dominant, as a leader, a guide, you're the one who has to be grounded and stable. You're the one who has to have that stillness inside you. All right. And sometimes the world will test you. Sometimes the woman will test you to see if you're easily thrown off your square. And what does it take? Does it take just a little puff of air to make you lose your shit, to make you lose focus, to lose your cool, your emotional calm? Or does it take a fucking hurricane? All right. And even if a hurricane comes, does that affect you at all? Right. And this is what gives women the idea that they can be dealt with. Right? And guys are like, man, I don't want a woman who wants like so strong to like deal with her, right? Listen, women are chaotic. They're chaotic creatures. And I don't say that with any sort of disdain. All right. It's like reflected in nature. Like nature is chaotic. Right? You go outside into the woods, you go hiking. Trees aren't just fucking growing in a straight line, right? It's all over the place. But that's the magic of nature. All right? Water flows all over the place. Seeds are dropped at random. There's like a pattern, but not really a pattern. It's not like it's a chaotic pattern. It's not an organized pattern. Women operate like this, but that's what makes them great. All right? If women are like too organized and shit like that, it's kind of boring, honestly. Like I enjoy having that yin yang sort of thing of chaos and order. Okay, it's just when the chaos takes over the order, that's when things are not fun. Okay, but as a leader, it's like you can allow for these things. Like you're the one with the dimmer, so you can allow for certain things to come in and out, right? And, like, let's say you're like playing in the bedroom and you're like, you know what? I want to take a break from being in charge. And you say, you know what? I'm giving the commands that you're in charge. And I'd like to say that's okay with you. That's your kink. You feel like being a little switchy that day, whatever. I don't know. But you then give the commands, right? So you're still the dominant. You give the commands you're saying, I want to be the bottom. I don't want to be the top today. I want to be the bottom, and I'm instructing you to take charge and do what you will. within the confines of her knowing what your boundaries are, what your likes and dislikes are, and all that bullshit. Okay, but it's you can invite chaos, you can invite flexibility. All right, but you're still the one who's judging how much or how little. All right. So yeah, Dukalux says you're a paranoid schizophrenic. Okay. And that is exactly what a schizophrenic thinks, like a delusion that everyone is against them and so on. Yeah, it's I hope that you can break out of that, out of being a paranoid schizophrenic. I imagine that's got to be very difficult. Excuse me, I think that's got to be a very difficult way to live. Because the truth of the matter is nobody gives a fuck about you. And a lot of guys can't deal with that either. They can't deal with the fact that nobody gives a shit. I think it's easier, like if you're living in a big city, like I live in New York, you get that understanding pretty darn quick. That like everybody is just in their own world with their own goals, their own drives, their own worries, their own whole life. And you can be all packed in like sardines right next to each other on a subway, and they're still in their own world. And they're not thinking about you. They're not considering you. You don't matter at all. One of the funny things, though, about New York is that if there's some sort of catastrophe, we band together like crazy, like as if we were related. Like all like the shit of like, get the fuck out of my face, I got my own life to deal with, that goes away. And it's like we get together and we like, kind of support stuff. I saw that with brownouts, blackouts, 9/11. It was, other like smaller catastrophes. But it's interesting. Oh, the big flood that was here with the hurricane. But the point is that people just don't give a shit. Right? Nobody cares. And the thing is that like it's very egocentric to think that people give a shit. It's like it like verges on like, I mean, we all have narcissistic tendencies, okay? Everybody does, all right? It's just people who take it far out into a position of pathology, okay? So, but everybody has narcissistic traits. But I'm saying that to think that people give a shit about your existence and what you're doing, and they're out to even further, they're trying to get you, they're trying to do harm to you or fuck you over in some kind of way, that's very egocentric. That's you thinking that you're more special to other people in a way that does not exist. Okay? You should think that you're special to yourself. Okay? And saying, because you really want to get to a point where you just actually give a fuck about who you are and not needing other people to verify. All right? You could be on a deserted island and still say to yourself, I fucking love who I am. I like where I'm at. I enjoy my life. I'm appreciative of my life. All right? Yeah, Peach here says, are those the gifts you speak of, being able to make that decision? I think I know what you're talking about. And yes. Yeah, so giving gifts, like the gifts of my presence, my body, my mind, my direction, my body, my dick, like, resources of mine, my time, everything that I am or everything that I can do, everything that I have is a potential gift. And that's the way I see it. And it was funny, I was talking with somebody just on Clubhouse like a couple nights ago, and it was just this woman, and we were just kind of sharing. It was a small room, it was like three of us, me and these two ladies. We were just chit-chatting, and they saw my profile and just wanted to know a little bit more about me. So I just started explaining my worldview and how I move about in life. And she says, dang it, it sounds like you're just in your own little bubble. Almost like with like a slight insult to it. And because I think she knew that, or got the impression that she was never going to be able to pop it. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like I could very well be living in a delusion, but I'm happy. I'm happy living in my delusion, right? This feels like the best reality that I could possibly be living in. So if I feel this way and I wake up and go to sleep every day feeling great, what's the matter if it's a delusion? Okay? I mean, as long as I'm not harming myself or harming anyone else, and I'm consistently seeing growth, then what the fuck does it matter if I'm living in a bubble? Yeah, I live in my own little universe, and it's great. I like it here. And the people who come in, they do what's necessary, they get the benefits of it too. So that's the kind of mentality. And yeah, it's selfish, but not like a don't fucking play with my toys kind of selfish, right? It's like leave me alone selfish, right? Like I like the idea that nobody considers me. I like being off the radar. I don't understand how celebrities do it. I don't know how they handle so many people listening and watching and talking about them. That would drive me fucking insane. Like, I really respect the celebrities who stay out of the public eye. They don't give big, long interviews. They're not trying to be out here drawing attention to themselves. You know, that's why I always like Keanu Reeves. Like, he's like super, super low key. He's not flamboyant. He's just as wealthy as like any other, you know, top A list, whatever fucking A-list actor. But, you know, he just sticks to himself. He's not showboaty. He's not like, oh, look at this fucking, you know, new home that I bought in Monaco. Like, what? I mean, actually, I don't even think he's like that. You know, I think he's like just like giving his money to family and charities and shit, dog shelters. But his fucking motorcycle company sucks. I'll say that. His bikes are ugly as sin. They just a bunch of bolted on parts, and it just does not look good, which is surprising because he's like a huge motorcycle guy. Like he's a collector, and so for a collector to make such an ugly bike is just astounding. But anyways, so yes, Dickaluk says delusion is believing something so hard that no matter what can get you out of it when it's not even close to the truth. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I might be living in a delusion. All right. But so far, I'm fine and better than fine. I'm growing. My woman is fine. My kids are fine. So it can't be all that bad being delusional with my thinking, my beliefs, my own perceptions. It's only when things are not going the way you want them to go, that's when you need to examine your own delusions. I mean, I firmly believe that we are all living in some sort of delusion and some sort of mirage, some sort of agreed upon illusion. I mean, there's ideas that this could all be just some sort of computer program, you know, and we were aware of the computer program, you know, kind of like in that movie Ready Player One, you know, like this is just an avatar. But we knew the problem with having an avatar, like say like in games, like say like Ready Player One, the problem is that you know you're you and you know the avatar is it, that there's this separation. The key, right? The biggest thing is like, what if you could separate the knowledge of that separation? And so perhaps somewhere along the line, right, when they were developing this program, that someone said, here we go. Here's the next step. Download this file and you will forget that you're in a program. You will forget that this is an avatar. That's the greatest trick of all, right? So, you know, I heard Alan Watts talk about something like that, where he was talking about like us being gods. And, you know, if you were granted the power of God, you would at first do everything in the world. Like you would travel here, you would do that, you become a millionaire, you become poor, you'd fuck every person you could possibly think of, you'd do drugs, you'd kill somebody, you'd go flying, you'd breathe underwater, like everything your mind could possibly imagine, okay? Until you got to the point where the biggest challenge would be to live in an existence not knowing that you're God. And so that's what we've done. That's something that Alan Watts was talking about. So it's like playing hide and seek with yourself. I think that's what he called it. And so, you know, who knows? But the point is that, you know, living in delusions, I've concocted my delusion instead of just accepting things and then being like, okay, I'm this sleeper. I'm saying, okay, well, if we're all subject to the various permutations of reality and belief and perceptions, why not just take hold of it? I mean, religious people do this all the time. They're like, no, there's a big sky daddy, and he makes all the decisions and created the earth and Adam and, the garden and talking snakes and burning bushes and all that. They're like, yes, that's the fucking reality I want to believe in. They do it all the time. Okay? It's really like a very, very old form of frame control. Like if you do some research into conversational structure and frame control, I've got that in my program as well. But it's just a really old form of frame control of like, this is what reality is. Okay? Instead of you having a conversation with somebody saying, this is what the conversation is, it's saying, this is what reality is. So it's like, if they're doing it and the government does it, and media does it and all this stuff, why just can't I do it? Why can't I just do it with myself? Why not? Okay. But it just takes time. It takes training. It takes dedication. Right? And then you can lead. And then you can be dominant if you want. And we're going to love it. And then she'll say, yes, sir. Can I please suck your dick today? And you're like, no, baby. You haven't done your chores. But if you do your chores, I'll think about it. Anyways. All right. So I'm gonna cut it off here. I appreciate everybody who stopped through. Check out my site, thedominancecademy.com. Learn some stuff. Got different tiers there, call tiers, video course tiers, whatever you want. I got to get some fucking rock salt because apparently a huge winter storm is coming through, and then it's probably gonna melt and everything's gonna turn to fucking ice. So I got to get some rock salt and prepare for the incoming doom. All right, guys, you guys have a fantastic afternoon. Appreciate everyone who's come through. Appreciate you who are watching this on the replay, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.